Hey there. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are. Welcome back. It's another episode of Red Pill Religion. Here in the United States, and really I think this is the only truly uniquely American religious holiday, Thanksgiving. Up in Canada, I think they already had theirs a few weeks ago. I don't know what other countries do this specific thing, but in America, this is the National Day of Thanksgiving. I can't remember how long was it instituted. When was it instituted? I forget. Let me just say tonight we're doing a relaxed stream. So please welcome again to Red Pill Religion, where we do like to say many things, including the belief in the supernatural and transcendent is normal, healthy, rational, and evidence based. In these days of social media censorship, where we've gotten constant threats to take us offline, to deplatform us, and etc. Please find us always on redpillreligion.com, where every day we got new articles, we got new videos, we got all kinds of good stuff. We appreciate if you like the work we're doing, donations via Bitcoin, Maker Support, not Maker Support, Bitcoin, PayPal, and Patreon are appreciated. We also, at some point soon, will be closing the free Discord chat room. It will not be free much longer, but if you get in before that, you'll be grandfathered in. Please feel free to come by in, as long as you know how to not act like a jerk to people when you first come in, and get to know people, and you're always welcome. Okay, so tonight, like I said, we're just having a chill stream. And joining us are the White Engine, who I haven't seen for a little while. How you doing? Say hi, Engine. I'm sorry, HistoryNet. HistoryNet.
Yeah, Dad.
Good to hear from you, brother. And everybody go subscribe to his HistoryNet channel. Also, there is our friend Neffel. Say hi, Joker Neffel.
Hey, what's up?
And also our friend Billy the Scribe. Come on in and say hi.
Hello, everyone. I am basically going by the Curious Scribe now, so it's very great to be here. Oh, and to also answer your question about Thanksgiving, Max, apparently in America it was first officially established by Abraham Lincoln in 1863, making a proclamation about the holiday.
I was thinking it was Lincoln, but then I thought maybe I misremembered that. So yeah, that's part of it, and
They made the Pilgrim and Indian feast central to it.
They did too, yes, because unlike the lies that they tell you in school, that they told many of you in school, it is not the case that the Pilgrims came over here and slaughtered the Indians. It's a kind of a complicated.
No. We were peace loving tree huggers until the big bad white Christians came over and slaughtered.
That's a myth, guys. For anybody who's listening, if they told you that in school, they lied to you.
Even some we were so imposed with all of us were imposed with Christianity. There totally weren't some of us who were open to Christianity.
Yeah.
And we totally didn't, and there were tribes that totally didn't worship the same Almighty God.
Well, if they want to complain about someone, complain about the United States government in the later 1800s. Now, those are the white men that basically killed a lot of Native Americans.
Yeah, I mean, relations were rocky, but usually really pretty cool for the most part with the American Indian tribes, the Native American tribes. Actually, as a point of reference, if anybody gets mad at us calling them American Indians, most American natives, American Indians, call themselves Indians and are not offended by the term.
I embrace the term.
It's only political activists and a very small minority of people from these.
But we mustn't forget that there's certain so-called Christians who put us in border schools, and whenever we spoke our native tongue, were forced to eat soap.
That sort of thing did happen. That was much later, though, and that did have a lot to do with.
It was around the time the Wild West was going on and in decline.
Yeah, which would be basically hundreds of years after the whole Thanksgiving affair, the Pilgrims and all that. Relationships were good between those people, and they did share food and did try to forge good relationships with them. That's simply a historical fact, and that's the reason why Lincoln pulled them out as an example, because it was the ideal he wanted to see. You know, everybody knew there had been war with these tribes, but he wanted, even in the middle of a civil war, he wanted everybody to remember there was this time when, you know, everybody got along and celebrated and thanked God together. So it is in fact a very it's an American religious holiday. And most Christians observe it. Most know it's not officially a Christian holiday. But it is, in the sense that, you know, it was founded by the government to be a time to give thanks to God.
Well, it is important enough that like went to a Catholic church and they had a Thanksgiving morning mass.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah, but it's not an official Catholic day of observation. Some parishes were closed, for example, not most of them, or they only just had the regular daily mass that they have, and that's it. They just closed up for the rest of the day, because it's not a required day of obligation or anything like that. But the church respects it because it's an American tradition, and we're part of America here. And you know, one of the reasons I wanted to make this a chill, relaxed stream, by the way, is I know a lot of people are out there. They're missing family. They didn't get a chance to be with family. If anybody's in the chat room, and or you know, anybody, you know, if you just want some company, that's kind of what we're here for. So if anybody's in the chat,
I already had 2 dinners.
Did you really? See, now, and I, as a lot of people wind up having to do these days, I had to work today. So, you know, I did not get Thanksgiving actually today.
Went to Golden Corral with the lady and her family, then I went to eat with my family.
Nice. Well, because of the, you know, the divorced dad situation and all that, which I am, you know, my kids are you know, with their mother and her family, and so I mean, that's okay. I see them at other holidays and stuff like that. It's hard, though. You want to be there with all of them. But then again, we're going to see them tomorrow. Our family for more than 10 years now has done our Thanksgivings the day or two after Thanksgiving, and I have to work it. So you know, I worked my day job today. There's a lot of people like that. I actually feel sorry for the people who have jobs, you know, who have to have jobs where they have to work on Thanksgiving. I mean, it's not a big deal for me, because like I said, I'll see my kids tomorrow. But which some dads don't even get that in this country. It's sad and despicable. But I don't know what got me off on that rant. I see we got Mia, Kimani, and Saint Dragon in the comments. Hi there. Sounds like you guys all had pretty good family Thanksgivings, though, huh?
Yep.
Yep.
Well, you know, tomorrow we're going to have something I've never had before, turducken. Has anybody ever had turducken before?
Huh?
You don't even know what turducken is? It's supposed to be like you take a big turkey and you stuff a duck inside it, and you stick a bunch of other stuff in it.
Nope.
So,
nope.
Oh, well, see, now I should just pull it up, because we're not that turducken. What is it called? A turducken. We'll even go to Fakepedia. As much as I hate Fakepedia, boo Fakepedia. It's a turducken is a dish consisting of a deboned chicken stuffed with a deboned duck, further stuffed into a deboned turkey. Okay, so it's turkey, duck, and chicken, all cooked together into one big mess. So I'll be looking forward.
Holy shit!
Yeah, I'm going to be looking forward to trying that. Here's the picture on Fakepedia, but this is probably a good picture. That's kind of what it looks like. You see, you got the layers of turkey and duck and chicken. I've never been a real big duck fan, but I can't imagine this being bad, to be honest. Especially because I'm a big meat fan. Speaking of history, by the way, before the show, who brought this up about the song Jingle Bells? Was that you, Billy?
Yeah, that was me.
This is interesting. Billy brought this article. Tell us about it, but tell us about it. But basically, Jingle Bells is a Thanksgiving song, not a Christmas song, isn't it?
Yes, I didn't read this article, but at one point I Googled Thanksgiving being a Jingle Bells being a Thanksgiving Day song, and from what I've read, apparently yeah, it was written in Boston, Massachusetts, around like 1853 or like the 1850s, like the mid 1800s, and so it was written for Thanksgiving. But of course, today a lot of people think that it's a Christmas song due to the fact that it includes the concept of bells as well as riding on a sleigh because we're used to seeing Santa Claus riding a sleigh, so we assume that and stuff. So I think it was in like the 1950s is when the song became really popular around Christmas time, when like the whole, because that was kind of the time period where all these different Christmas songs were really taking off in pop culture around the holidays. So that's kind of where the song became like a Christmas song. It was like in the early to mid 20th century.
That really makes sense because if you listen to the song, there is just nothing particularly Christmas about those lyrics. Dashing through the snow in a one-horse open sleigh, over the fields we go, laughing all the way. There's not a single Christmas reference. There's not a single date reference. There's not a single. There's nothing about reindeer either. I mean, it's literally about nothing but the family getting together and taking a sleigh ride to visit grandma in the winter. You could literally play it for any weekend or whatever out in the countryside, and it would fit just as well. But it's intensely associated with Christmas, isn't it? I mean, like, it feels weird to hear it outside of a Christmas environment. Huh. So this was written by James L. Pierpont, too. I never really liked holidays when I was a kid, and I still have kind of a weird relationship with them where I'm kind of indifferent to them. Maybe that's just because I kind of had a kind of an unstable family environment growing up, I guess, but they just never attracted me. I always preferred to do something else. You always used to anyway. Although, as I've become a dad and I've gotten older, I make more of an effort. But feels like culturally, most people don't treat holidays seriously anymore. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, for me, I guess you could say I had a very classic American childhood. So, holidays were always a really fun thing to participate in. Like Christmas, you get the presents and, the whole trees and Santa Claus. Halloween, you get to dress up in costumes and get candy. And then with Thanksgiving, it's a time where you get to basically eat a lot of food and basically, drink like sparkling cider.
Yeah.
So, that was kind of my childhood right there.
Yeah,
So I was like,
same here. But as of recent years, I start to feel that the holiday spirit is just being sucked out of culture.
Well, I think that's what it is.
Oh, yeah.
It may have been all my years. All my years as an atheist definitely contributed there. I didn't care that the culture was losing. I didn't care much at all that the culture was losing its Christmas spirit or its holiday spirit or its sense of the sacred. I didn't care about any of that. And then I eventually realized that might have something to do with my own depression and anxiety and isolation issues too.
Oh, I was just gonna say I kind of blame like the nihilism as well as people who just feel either ashamed to be like part of the culture or just feel all the self guilt that's been peddled thanks to our bad education system.
Absolutely, absolutely, and we've been told to even mock the sacred, and people used to just instinctively at least understand that some things are sacred, something that they matter, and even just keeping a tradition, even if it's not a sacred tradition, even if it's just a tradition that's a positive and wholesome thing. The whole culture has lost any sense of that. It's all about consumerism, and or it's just another day off. It's just another day off. If you're lucky and have a good job, it's a day off. If you're not lucky, you'll be stuck with a horrible job where you have to work on the holiday. Which I really feel for people like that.
Yeah, it's kind of weird because, like, yeah, it's like a lot of these people, they're into consumerism, but they also always complain about consumerism. As in, it's like they're critics of consumerism, but they're also hypocrites because they participate in it.
Yeah, it's almost like their virtue. Some people virtue signal the fact, oh, I hate consumerism, while they totally live that way. Oh,
Yeah, that's
Chad,
your
My
typical
my
American
lady and her
communist.
family are shopping on for Black Friday. Thankfully I got out of that.
I see D-Man joined us in the chat too. Hey, good to see you, D-Man.
Yo, what's up?
That's brass.
I, for the life, that is that Brass? Okay, Brass, you should use a better freaking handle, or just come join us if you want to. Let me know if you want to. It is just a Thanksgiving show, and people relax. But yeah, I never cared about holidays, and then I finally figured out why they are important. And so I actually feel for people who have to work today or can't be with family today. I know that, and we should, if they aren't offended, we should pray for them too. Pray for them whether they're offended or not, I guess. Because I have actually been there. I was at one point in my life more or less functionally homeless, and having to live with find roommates I could move in with who would take me, stuff like that. And it was a rough time in my life. And the holidays were always, it tended to be even more acute because I was really starting to become aware of why it was wrong that I had dismissed holidays in the past. It was a way I always honored it for the kids, but I was always half-hearted about it because I wasn't a fan of holidays ever. But yeah, that was 10 years ago. I get it now. In fact, I'd even make this political point. I actually think we got swindled by libertarian type thinkers. I'm sorry I pick on libertarians sometime, but they deserve it. It used to be common to outlaw commerce on certain days. And libertarians and so-called free marketeers came in and just said that was an interference in the market, that was an oppression of free enterprise, that was denying people's opportunity, blah, 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 blah. No, the culture used to have it so that one of the primary benefits of restricting commerce is not so rich people and wealthy people can have a day off, but so that poor people can have a day off. Or even slaves can have a day off, back in the days of slavery. And Sunday was supposed to be a day of rest no matter what. You wouldn't work your slaves on Sunday, even in the days of slavery. I'm not saying it's a good thing, but that's, the laws restricting commerce on Sundays so people could go and worship and have a day of rest. A thousands of year old tradition that everybody should have a day of rest. Our culture's totally thrown that out. Have you noticed?
Yeah, I noticed. I have noticed. It's kind of fucked up.
Actually, I think it is. I really did. I mean, it sounds oppressive, but really, just a law which says no, you'll be restricted to only emergency services on Sundays. Everybody stay home, be with your family. Yeah, it's good for the whole society, even if you're not religious. You know what I mean?
Yeah, what's funny is that place I used to work at, they basically recently made it so they would close on Christmas to be with the families. And we got several people complaining, saying they wanted to work Christmas to get the extra money, funny enough.
Well, sure. But, I guess no, I really do think people should just start respecting it. The whole culture needs to pause and take a break once in a while, just for cultural sanity's sake, if not respect to the sacred. And it's the same way too. It started to bug me. It's kind of cool that we have all these stores and services that are 24/7 these days, but again, it's kind of not. I mean, there are a lot of people like at work right now who wish they could be home with their kids or with their parents or or whatever, and they can't be. And you can understand why that's necessary for like essential services in the world, like police, right? That sort of thing. But other than that, laws which used to just say, look, you're going to, commerce is between these hours and it won't be outside these hours. And those used to be commonplace. And I think they actually, you can call that oppression, but I think they actually made sense and made society more stable, so that it would be unusual to expect somebody to be at work at 9 p.m. It should be.
Yeah, it would be unusual. It's like back in the olden days, you would most of the time you would work from dusk till dawn.
Right, and actually had substantial breaks from dusk till dawn.
I think you mean dawn till dusk.
Dawn till dusk, yeah, dawn till dusk. Right. And
yeah, dawn till dusk. Yeah, that's what I meant.
And it wasn't just because we had lacked technology. We had fire. We could stay up all night if we wanted to. We didn't want to, and it wasn't good for us. Everybody knew that wasn't good for us. I actually feel sorry for especially millennials, who are they don't even know what it is to have a stable job. They got 2-3 part-time jobs, some of them. And it really hurts. I was just counseling a young man. He was frustrated because he's got 2 jobs. His schedule is very chaotic. Most of the time he can't make it to church on Sundays. He feels terrible about it because he really wants to be there, actually. Of course, the culture has no respect for that sense of the sacred. And which, by the way, historically, even in slave-holding societies, they wouldn't treat slaves this way. Getting a day off for a day of worship has just been a thing recognized across cultures forever. It appears people need it for their health. Now, the cool thing is, of course, if you're Catholic, I pointed out to him, he didn't know this, but if you're Catholic, most Catholic parishes have daily masses. So if you can't make Sunday, you can get to mass almost any day of the week, unless it's a really small parish and they just don't have enough priests or whatever. But in any big metropolitan area, you can go any day of the week. It's preferred. You're supposed to go on Sunday, but if you can't make it, you can make it up during the week. So that's something to be thankful for if you're Catholic. But yeah, no, I actually do think our society has to stop and think what it's doing, not honoring things like this and just looking at them as symbolic. I mean, hell, especially these days, a lot of families don't even see each other unless they get together on the holidays. I see G. Will says, I've heard that it's something of a tradition among the Pastafarian atheists to go out for Chinese on Christmas because Chinese restaurants are, quote, the only ones open, unquote. Yeah, that used to be true, but an awful lot of them are now. Actually, that's part of one of the best Christmas movies of all time, which is worth thinking about. Have you guys all seen A Christmas Story?
I have not, but my aunt is crazy about it.
I haven't, but I remember TBS would do a 24-hour run of it.
Well, it is one of those things where it gets pushed, like It's a Wonderful Life and A Christmas Story and all those that get over pushed by some of the TV networks. So it seems like it's always there in the background. But if you ever get
Home Alone is better. Home Alone's better, and the Santa Claus.
We can argue about it all you want, but can I at least? Okay. So A Christmas Story is a really, really, really good movie, you two, and anybody else. If you haven't had a chance to see it, sit down and watch it. You will like it. There's a reason they push it in your face too much on some TV networks, but if you take it away from that, that's not the movie's fault. That's them having just milking the content. Sit down and watch it sometime. It's really funny, and I forget the point I was going to make about it, though. The end scene of the movie is that they go to they have a tragedy and they wind up having Christmas dinner at a Chinese restaurant. So that's all I was going to say there.
Did you ever watch that Christmas movie Jingle All the Way starring Arnold Schwarzenegger?
Jingle All the Way starring Arnold Schwarzenegger.
No.
That's a good one. It's a movie that kind of is it's a comedy, and the comedy kind of is based around how crazy people get trying to find presents for Christmas and stuff. And
I've seen pieces of that.
Yeah. Basically, Arnold Schwarzenegger's character and another character who's played by a rapper named Sinbad. Basically, they're both trying to find the superhero action figure for their son, which is like the most popular action figure for Christmas that year. So they go to all these different stores trying to get one, and they like people like fight over toys and stuff. It's pretty funny.
I kind of fell out of love with Schwarzenegger as an actor some time ago, but he can be real. And I just don't. The truth of the matter is, I don't actually like most Christmas movies. I really don't. There's only a select few I like. So when I hear there's a new Christmas movie or whatever, but you're saying this one's pretty good, huh?
I think it's pretty funny comedy. I watched a lot as a kid. You know, it's back when Arnold Schwarzenegger was like doing his like kids movies and stuff.
Okay. Well, that makes sense. Yeah, like Kindergarten Cop and all that, right? I never found Schwarzenegger all that funny, to be honest with you. I actually do like him more in his action roles where he, throws some comedy in, and so you get a wry chuckle or whatever. But
well, you won't get a complaint from me because I mean I still think Conan is his best role ever.
I don't think that was his best role as an actor, but he was good. He was, yeah. I actually thought he matured pretty well as an actor over time, but I never thought his comedic timing was really all that good. I always thought the comedy of Arnold Schwarzenegger just kind of hinged on the fact that he's muscle Schwarzenegger guy. He never seemed that clever or funny to me, to be honest with you. I mean, I like him, but I just never found him that funny in comedies.
Yeah, I also agree with White Engine when he says with History Net that like Home Alone was a really great series as well. Like I watched basically all of them, and yeah, the second one's my favorite personally.
Yeah,
well, the fourth one sucked, but the first three were good.
Well, the other day here, Austin was on, and he gave a really strong endorsement of Home Alone 2 as the best in the series, in his opinion. And he notes that it's actually overtly religious and Christian, actually. And he made a good extended defense of it on that grounds.
How so?
Well, apparently, you'd have to go back and listen to the stream, but I haven't seen it. But I mean, he says the movie is more overtly religious. You see him pray there. You see him meet a homeless woman who's less fortunate than him and need to go and do something, and the family actually goes to church and stuff. And so I mean, it's not I don't know, he's not saying it there's an actual Christian message in it, is what he said. I haven't seen it, but it's what he said. If you watch it all the way through to the very end, and it's got a very Christian message to it, a very Christian heart to it, unlike the other Home Alone films. That's what he said. Maybe go watch it again with those eyes on. I don't know.
I got booted out. Like, yeah, you sure didn't mean the Santa Claus, because that seemed religious kind of in its message, like seeing isn't believing, believing is seeing, stuff like that.
I barely remember the Santa Claus movie. It didn't make a dent on me. No,
Well,
he was talking about how, okay, you dropped out. He was talking about how Macaulay Culkin's parents are shown to be traditional Catholics who go to church, and during his adventures, he prays. He goes to the park and kneels down and prays for help. And he meets a homeless woman and discovers that realizes he has to help someone who's less fortunate than himself. So the whole movie winds up having an actual moral message and a spiritual trajectory that is not in the other Home Alone films. Maybe we'll go back and watch it with those eyes on it.
That's right. I did forget that.
Well, in the first movie, he does go to a church where he talks with that guy who everyone thinks is like a creeper or someone who's a potential killer. But then it turns out, the guy basically has an estranged and basically an estranged relationship with his son, and he won't talk with his son because he's worried that his son won't ever talk with him ever again. So he basically, but Kevin kind of, in a sense, like gives him a speech telling him that he should at least try to be with his son again. At the end, you see that him and his son actually do reconnect.
Oh, so I see we have been joined by Yehuda, aka Aaron. Can you hear? Are you there, sir?
Yes, I am. How's it going, everyone?
Yehuda is one of our wily Jew characters who hangs out with us.
Or are you smiling, Liger?
Yeah,
I can neither confirm or deny that.
we know that you are intentionally working for the Israeli Zionist rabbis.
I always love that name. Oy vey, shalom, brother.
Hey, call me a shill or sellout, but I'm pro-Israel, so
I'm kind of indifferent to the whole thing. It's like Israel can hold its own. I mean, they have nukes, and their military is not to be fucked with. So
I'm not going to say that I'm pro-Israel so much as I recognize they have a right to exist, which I'm pleased to see the Crown Prince has said in Saudi Arabia.
So true. It's like as a Belizean, I like to respect the sovereignty of all nations.
Yeah. But the Orthodox rabbi Zionists globalists are going to take us over. So that is a joke for anybody who's not listening. I'm being ridiculous. In fact, if you know how that works, the religious Jews are hated by the secular globalist Jews and vice versa for the most part. It's just part of the politics of Israel too.
Yeah, I'm hoping the religious Jews would finally put the secular Zionists in their place.
Max, you do realize that someone on a certain atheist show is going to try and take this out of context and label you an anti-Semite?
Of course they do.
Of course they will. Okay, so let Aaron talk. So how was your Thanksgiving, sir?
It's been relatively calm, actually. Not really much going on here. Just doing independent research, basically.
I hear you. No, we were joking with him, but Aaron has actually been one of our volunteers for about a year now. Is it that long? I can't remember. Just helping as a team mod and doing other things. So really appreciate that, by the way.
Thank you for all the work all of you are doing. It's greatly appreciated, and it's actually been very, very helpful for me to kind of put things into perspective regarding just religious or religiosity and secularism and atheism and all that. It's been a huge learning experience for me. So and I had some sense of this before. I've been interested in human relationships and all that for a long time. I've studied some anthropology and things like that. So it's been very enlightening, and I appreciate it. So thank you very much.
Okay, well, thank you for that. Yeah, we get a lot of people, particularly Christians and other Catholics, who do not get what we're doing. I keep telling people this is not a ministry, for one thing, and we're actually long term. The way I'm seeing it is for a space for young men or just any men questioning to have a philosophical space to come in. It's part of why we're rough and rowdy. Girls who want to come in and hang with us have to be the kind of girls who like to hang out with guys who use rough language and really argue and don't care about your feelings. That's why we like people like Diva and Mixed Race Barbie and Oda. Very thankful for them. Ladies who know how to just let men be men and be rough and stuff, and just have this philosophical space. That's what I love about it. I'm gonna go. I gotta go. I'll be right back, guys. Someone find something to talk about.
Yeah,
something to talk about.
Yeah. All right. Well, so have you guys ever watched Bad Santa?
Yeah, I like that one.
Yeah, that's a good one and stuff. Like I saw it like like 5 years ago. And yeah, I thought Billy Bob Thornton was like hilarious in that film.
Yeah, that was just I was just laughing my ass off when he was all stressed off and trying to eat his salad at the food court, and she's like,
Yeah.
his mother and her kid was like, "Tell Santa what you want for Christmas." And he was
fucking break. Yeah,
he
that was
just-
the funniest shit ever. And,
yeah,
and you know this, I love how I forgot what.
he just lashed out. I'm on my fucking lunch break, okay?
Yeah. So
It's like you can tell that he's had some rough times, but at the same time, he also has a soft side when it came to Furman.
Yeah,
when it came to you mean the kid?
yeah.
Yeah. And then and then it's like the kid keeps asking the questions. He's like, what the fuck is wrong with you and stuff.
It was trying to attend to him while he's in bed. Would you like a sandwich? No, I don't want any fucking sandwiches.
Yeah, and then there's like that Middle Eastern guy, and I'm not sure if he's Muslim or not, but he basically starts attacking him and stuff and tells like I am not gay or something like that. So yeah, it's like this guy like has some mental issues. But yeah, no, that's a good film.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, other than that, like, see, I think the most recent Christmas movie, although technically it's Santa Claus is in it, but you could consider a holiday film. Like, I think like Rise of the Guardians was like the last kind of holiday-esque film I watched that came out like in 2012.
Yeah, and there's that classic Christmas movie, Die Hard.
Oh, Die Hard, okay.
Please. Yeah.
Well, I like the idea of Rise of the Guardians because even though it's not religious, there is some spiritual aspects to it where it's like, all the main characters are like representative of a different holiday, like Santa, the Tooth Fairy, the Sandman for dreams, and like the Easter Bunny. And there's of course is Jack Frost. And the thing is, like, each of them turns out were people from the past, but they died at one point, and then they were reincarnated as spirits. And basically, they represent an aspect of childhood. Like with Santa Claus, he can see like the magic in everything around him, which is why he makes so many great toys. And Easter Bunny, he represents hope. And even though his speech, he doesn't really mention the fact that Easter is based off of the resurrection of Jesus Christ, he kind of alludes to it in a way where he talks about Easter's like new beginnings when things start over and people are given hope and stuff, which is basically kind of like how Jesus Christ's resurrection.
And there's this really good Christmas movie that you've seen, The Family Man.
No, I did not.
With Nicolas Cage. He's this successful multimillionaire who thinks he doesn't need a family, and he missed out on an opportunity with his college sweetheart, like back in the 80s. Then
so it's like the Christmas Carol then.
And then he then he meets an angel who he meets this guy who robs a gas station or is about to rob a gas station, but it turns out he's an angel who he knew was gonna stop him. And then they have a talk, and then the next morning he wakes up in this parallel universe where he actually did marry his sweetheart and they had kids together, and he's like trying to. Then he realizes that family is what he needed and not all this money.
Yeah. I also really enjoy like watching some of the adaptations of the Christmas Carol because like I originally saw the Muppets adaptation, then I saw like Disney's animated adaptation a few years ago, and then I also saw like the musical adaptation, which is also pretty good.
Yeah, then you got shows like Charlie Brown and The Simpsons, Christmas and all that, but what got me stopped watching Family Guy was was that one last Christmas one where they had one Christmas one where there was just a giant middle finger to Christians.
Which one was that?
Oh yeah, it's like damn, which one was it?
Oh, the one with Jesus in it?
It was about the nativity story, I think, and And then after that is like
Wait, you talking about the one where Lois loses her mind and like her Christmas spirit gets crushed?
oh no, never mind. It wasn't the Christmas one. It was the one where that was the where Jesus pretended to be a virgin, but it turned out when he was sleeping with other men's wives. And then at the
I
end,
mean,
and
this is
at
Seth
the end,
MacFarlane.
he was like, screw it, I'm not even real.
Okay, well, yeah, this is Seth MacFarlane. The guy is like clearly an atheist and he's a liberal, so he's gonna play those games.
Seth MacFarlane, I used to be a big Seth MacFarlane fan, and then
me too.
And then one day he literally, people don't
here.
This was an ideological push in the mainstream media and in Hollywood to make people atheist. They even tried to and failed to bully Trey Parker and Matt Stone into declaring themselves atheists. And instead of declaring themselves atheists, they made the best anti-atheist movie ever made. If you ever get a chance to see the original 3-part South Park, Go God Go.
Was that the one with Hanky the Christmas Poo?
No.
No, nothing to do with Hanky the Christmas.
Parker is a deist and Stone is an atheist, but he's not. They're not ideological about it. Like they shit on, they give religion a lot of shit, but they see dogmatic atheists in the same manner.
Neither one of them is atheists. Agnostic as best is what one of them is, and I mean basically they're private about their spirituality, but some years ago they came out and were very clear that actually Penn Jillette had called them and pressured them both into declaring themselves atheists, and they both declined to do so, and it upset him. And instead they wound up making this wonderful here it is on Wikia Fandom. Let me pull it up here. Can you guys see this? You should go find this. By the way, you can't find much reference to this at all in YouTube. It gets scrubbed, or you'll see altered versions with snippets of it that are altered and nonsense. If you go to South Park Studios and you find the original Go God Go, you would not believe what an incredible, they rip the atheist community apart so bad.
What was the year of the release date, or the airing?
It was the year that it kicked off in 2006.
Oh, okay.
The year that it kicked off, it's 151st episode. It aired on November 1st, 2006. It's part one of a two-parter that concluded with Go God Go. And it is so funny. It takes place in the era where the Nintendo Wii was first coming out, and Cartman gets overexcited and can't wait to Cartman can't wait to get the Wii. He's going to have to wait 6 weeks or whatever, and he can't do it. So because he can't stand the pressure, he gets himself frozen in ice. And Butters is supposed to get him out of the ice in 6 weeks, but instead it winds up going like 500 years in the future. And 500 years in the future, everybody is atheist, but there's 3 factions of atheists: the Rational Atheists Alliance and the Atheist Science for Reasons, and they're at constant war for Hail Mighty Science. It's amazing. It's so funny.
It's like basically South Park's way of saying, "Hey, atheists, if you really want to talk bad about fanatics, look in a mirror."
And they savage Richard Dawkins so bad. They savage Richard Dawkins. And I tell you,
they had him buggering that transvestite teacher.
So, yes.
And he was still talking when he had shit on his face.
Oh my God! It really was in response to Penn Jillette trying to make themselves call themselves atheists. That was part of it. That's a backstory part that you have a hard time finding.
Why didn't they savage Gillette also?
And what's that?
I said, why didn't they savage Gillette also?
Well, somebody should, because he needs savaging, man. That guy is such a phony. I was such a big fan of his for so long. When I finally saw through him, oh my God, that's an evil man. I'll say it publicly. Angela, it's an evil man. I have this whole I have the whole fucking bullshit box set collection. I wish I could get my money back. But anyway, this is just really funny, and it is true. Search YouTube for any references to this, and it's almost impossible to find any. I haven't looked recently, but I've looked several times the last few years. And if you've got references, it's really, you would think people would have up snippets or whatever, but they get taken down. So I'll try it here on YouTube right now. South Park, Go God Go.
But yesterday, I uploaded one where Thunderfoot threw Carrier under the bus.
Oh yeah, I saw that.
I'm so glad somebody. Maybe, was that was an old video, wasn't it? Wasn't that video like a year or two old?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, Thunderfoot was going to roast him because, I mean, Thunderfoot roasted him from the get-go when he introduced Atheism Plus, because, that was when basically the atheists had a split in their community because there were people who thought social justice was stupid, and then the people who wanted to mix some cultural Marxism with atheism, so yeah.
Well, dogmatic atheism has always been cultural Marxism.
Well, they're an anti-atheist community.
This says right here you can buy it on YouTube, Go God Go, for $1.99. But how can it have only 16 upvotes? Well, I'll give it one now. People should buy it. Really, if you ever have just experienced obnoxious internet atheists, watch Go God Go. And actually, if you're an atheist and you watch Go God Go, here's my dare. If you're an atheist and you watch Go God Go and you don't at least find it funny, you have no sense of humor about yourself. And you would at least see, I swear, that just making such an identity out of your atheism is just as batty as any crazy fundamentalist Christian you ever met. I dare any atheist. That's what I would say. If an atheist can watch this and laugh, that's an atheist who is a secure person in his atheism, in his lack of beliefs. As they say, you can see the humor in this. Because really, man, it was the fanaticism of atheism that really got to me when I was witnessing it. I'm like, something's got. I didn't even think you could make a cause out of atheism, right? And when I realized people were doing that and how it was totally ideological and totally cultish and totally freakish and actually very nasty to people.
Well, in all fairness, it was going on the other side of the world when you were growing up in Russia, in the Soviet Union, and China.
Yeah.
Well,
but now it's it's creeped its way into the West.
Creeped its way over here, and Christians have to push back. Everybody should push back, actually. I think Muslims should push back against it. They really should. Jews should push against it. Hindus should push against it. And they are, by the way. That's another dirty secret, that our secular media really works overtime to keep a lid on these things. This is a very religious world, and it's growing more religious every year. The secular.
I wish I shared your optimism.
Well,
it has nothing to do with optimism. It has to do with what the social science shows us and what the demographic trends are already showing us.
Well, I will say it's good. Well, good news is I think I did read somewhere apparently I'm not sure. I can't remember if it's Christians as a whole or maybe it was Catholics, but there is apparently increase in Catholics or Christians. Like the population is going up.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. In fact, the Catholic population is still going up in the United States, mostly due to Mexican immigrants, legal ones, but still but some, that'll be some of the illegal population too, I'm sorry to say.
I don't know. We're here to talk about the holidays. Let's not ruin it with atheists.
But anyway, if you look at this book, The Triumph of Faith, by Rodney Stark, and if you just subscribe to Dr. Steve Turley's channel here on YouTube, we've had him on a couple of times, and we're probably going to have him on again at some point because he's agreed to talk to me about some of the stuff with the Russian Orthodox Church. Bring up his stream. It's not optimism. It's something that Steve Hurley documents in real time, basically, that sociologist Rodney Stark and a number of others have observed. No, in point of fact, the entire secularization hypothesis is a myth. The secular population, the secularist population is shrinking rapidly wherever you look, for the most part. And all the major world religions, all of them are growing. The only one that might or might not be, because the numbers are a little indeterminate, is the Buddhists. There's still a ton of them.
And you know what sucks now? They have I don't know of any religious leaning shows like you have to watch Rugrats. Like it's filled with Jewishness.
Well,
yes, absolutely. But to get back to what we're talking about here, what I was talking about here, Christianity is on the rise in the United States. Christianity is on the rise in Europe, Western Europe, the United Kingdom, South Africa, Western Europe, Germany. I mean, name the country. Your religion is up, not down.
It's especially. Oh, I was gonna say it's especially big in China. Apparently, that's at least what I learned from one of Black Pigeon Speaks video. Apparently, yeah, there's been like it's either hundreds of thousands or millions of people converting to the Christian faith,
and that's why they're cracking down.
Well, I know, and that's why they're doing more and more repression of Christians in China. But yes, but it's not just Christians, okay? Islam is still on the rise. It's increasing. It's shrinking, not growing as a percentage of the human population, I mean. Secularists are shrinking, period. And they are being replaced by religious people at a rapid rate. Yearly, so much that you can pretty much document it the decline of the secularists every year. Why? Because they don't have kids, they don't reproduce, they have fewer kids, or they have no kids at all. They sterilize themselves, they go child free, they kill themselves with pills or whatever I mean, bottom line is they do, despite the atheist myth that you can just use psychology to be healthy. Atheists are like 8 times as likely to suicide. Basically, atheists do not reproduce. For like every 1 child an atheist reproduces, religious people are reproducing something like 3.2. And contrary to the secularization hypothesis, most children of the religious stay religious. They do not apostatize out and become atheist, or they'll just change their spiritualities. They don't actually become atheist. And it's happening everywhere. It's happening in India, which is right now ruled by the Hindu Nationalist Party. Who embrace, and now good or bad, overall I'd say better than the secularists. I really would. But they've embraced what amounts to a Hindu version or a variety of Sharia law for the country, embracing Hindu identity that hard. Their laws are going to be based on certain kind of vague,
there's actually
stuff like that. Which is really messing with the globalist agenda, by the way. In Japan, the government is totally embracing and fiercely identifying with Shintoism as a part of cultural and national identity, and a source of unity. And Shinto priests at major state functions coming in to give blessings and all that sort of thing. Japan is actually a very religious country. I'm surprised Black Pigeon Speaks has not mentioned that, because he lives there. He should be able to see that this is happening.
I think he made the video on China just because he was highlighting basically the cultural impact that's going to have on a still rather, statist communist like government stuff as China. But interesting enough is that's one of the reasons why in America they have such a stranglehold on education, because these people thrive off of being able to try and get at kids early to try and convert them to Marxist ideology, which includes a secularist worldview and stuff. And it's why I live in a big liberal city and stuff, and a lot of those people are basically all moving out to these very blue states or blue cities.
Yeah, I mean, the urban populations are turning increasingly socialist. They just are. And that's also a global phenomenon. The dense urban centers tend to
Yeah.
be very basically leftist, globalist oriented. And that
Yeah, it's
includes
because there's a
libertarians. But they also, again, they're shrinking. Healthy people leave the cities. Um, 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 the cities, for the most part, are not good places to be unless you're a certain amount of wealthy. They're horrible places if you're poor. You want to get out of them if you can.
Well, the interesting is that in the city, well, basically, to the modern day American left wing city or liberal city is basically since like in a sense like almost like a refugee camp for the country because a lot of people come to the city to flee from basically the Bible Belt or whatever like non progressive parts of the country and stuff. And the cities have a lot of members of the LGBT community in them.
Yeah, but you do not want to live in New York City and be poor. You do not want to live in Chicago, Detroit, Los Angeles, San Diego, be poor.
I'm trying to get out of Chicago.
I used to love Chicago. I lived there for 25 years, and
Damn, I want to visit there.
there's much beauty there, but the way it's not a place you want to raise your kids for the most part. It's really not a place for stability. And
Manhattan's worth visiting at least once a year, at least.
Sure.
Oh yeah, Manhattan's beautiful. Yeah, it's just expensive, but like I mean,
because what you've got is that classic rich-poor divide now. So if you have a lot of money, because you could never live in Manhattan, you realize that.
And then the bus the bus driver was saying on our ride home that night, he was telling all of us to look at the gas station and see the price on the sign and says, "Now you know why I no longer live in New York."
Yeah. Well, yeah, just don't live in Seattle because I mean, I'm from there originally. Like, I was born there and stuff, but today it's like there's just so many homeless people and so many drug addicts, and it's like a huge next to San Francisco. It's like the next biggest center for like the LGBT
Los
community.
Angeles and San Francisco.
You know what? You're saying all this. You don't want to live in Manila. You don't want to live in London. You don't want to.
But literally in Seattle,
okay, parts of these, but
San Francisco and Las Vegas are Sodom and Gomorrah.
But basically, like, okay, here's.
I've heard Vegas isn't too bad, but well, I mean, it's Sin City already. What am I saying?
Well, let me put it this way. Okay, aside from West Seattle, which is a little more conservative than the rest of the city, you will literally for almost every block or every couple of blocks be flooded with lots of posters talking about how we need to denounce the Republican government, how people need to embrace socialism. It's like literally the city is basically run by Antifa, and
so
all
Vegas?
of their
Vegas?
No. I'm talking about Seattle, Washington.
Seattle.
Oh, sorry, Seattle, Washington. Yeah, it's like they have some of the most ridiculous progressive laws in almost any American city. Like they've taxed sugary drinks. They've tried taxing like people, companies that have a huge amount of workers. It's like really crazy in that city.
So Scribe, you lived in Seattle for a while. Are you familiar then with the whole Cascadia independence movement?
No, I'm not familiar with that. Like I was born there, then I moved to the East Coast in Connecticut in like 1998, and then I moved back out there in 2015.
Okay, yeah, there's a huge, I mean, it's a relatively huge movement called the Cascadia independence movement, and it's based in this theory that some sociologists came up with, I think back in the 70s or something like that, that certain parts of the Pacific Northwest and Pacific states, we got British Columbia, Washington. I'm reading this from the Wikipedia page on it. British Columbia, Washington, Oregon, certain parts of coastal Alaska, in some cases, and Northern California, parts of Idaho, Montana, Wyoming, as far southeast as Colorado and Yukon. It's based on the idea that these places all form their own, what's called a bioregion.
Oh my.
Okay.
I just see something here. This is too hilarious. There is no YouTube channel anywhere like this one while this conversation is going on.
Yeah, and
Wait, no, let me finish what I'm saying, please, for a minute. Somebody, we just had somebody attempt to hire a witch to cast a curse on Lawrence Krauss. This is literally happening as we speak. As a Catholic, I should probably say.
Honestly, these fucking witches never even picked up a grimoire. I'm getting good laughing at this while drinking a beer.
We like Autumn Storm. I'm just saying how ironic it is because we get shipped from other Christians because we just hang out with people, wherever they're from, as long as they're not hostile.
What channel you won't find like this?
What channel won't? What?
No, what channel were you talking about? Won't find a channel quite like this one.
Right, the one you're on here. Do you even ever know what channel we're on? We're on Red Pill Religion.
Yeah, I didn't know which one you were talking about.
I said it's happening right here in the chat. It was just funny. Now I'm having to explain it. It's not actually that funny. Just go into the chat in this hangout here, and it's just.
I am.
Says, Autumn Storm, can you give Lawrence Krauss chronic diarrhea? I love that.
Oh,
and Arcadio Occult, our professional witch friend, says, I'm looking into it. They're joking with each other. I'm just saying, where do you see conversation?
all right. You don't need to explain it.
All right. Take it back.
But
I'm
I guess
slow.
I am still hoping that California breaks off into 3 states because I think that would be for the best if they did that.
I'm all for at this point. I can't. I have real doubts. I don't want to get too political, but I mean, I have real doubts about. I don't want to even get into specific politics or politicians, but I have real doubts this country can survive and not. I mean, we might be better off fracturing off from and having some states go different ways. Because really, at this point, I feel like completely freakishly disconnected from anybody in these big blue areas. Even friends of mine who live in or near them, I can't talk to them anymore. They live in an alternate reality, right? And it really is like something's wrong, and we just can't. We're at different views of reality.
Yeah, I blame education, the news cycle, as well as a huge amount of pop culture that has become extremely biased towards one specific narrative.
The problem is with parts of the country breaking off like that is, it to me that implies civil war. It implies revolution, and revolution leads to civil war, and that's a huge problem.
That's the thing. The language of the left is of civil war. The right, by and large, sees itself falsely accused of that. Rightly or wrongly, the right sees itself. The red state Americans see themselves as falsely accused of being violent and evil and hateful and dangerous. Perceive themselves as being under threat because they keep, they see themselves as the ones who are like, why can't you just leave us alone?
Well,
why do you have to control us? Why do you have to mistreat us? It's like it's a class conflict is what it is. With the rich ruling elite class thinking they represent the interests of the poor classes, and they don't, because a whole lot of us are down here saying, no, we don't want your way of life and your values. Can you just leave us alone and stop attacking us?
Well, I mean, I think it's still a little more complex than just the class, because remember, like, a lot of these like Antifa guys, these socialists, a lot of them are mostly middle and lower class people. I think right now what we have right now is basically people who have been sold a very bad idea, basically by snake oil salesmen, as you would call them. You know, the people
yeah.
who think that they're selling you, who you think are selling you something genuine, but in fact they're selling you something that's garbage. They've been conned. You know, and this happens to like people on the top and people on the bottom.
And there really does exist something. Vox Day, who I am an on again, off again fan of, and others are right to point out that, you know, Agenda 21 does exist. Now, how far it's gotten and all that, it is a real thing. And
What's Agenda 21?
You know, man,
it was.
It's really an elaborate plan to. It really is an elaborate plan to move as many people as possible into dense urban areas, run by the UN, the Open Society Foundation. They've got this whole thing going where they really have, really plans to just have us monitored 24/7. Not just through our smartphones, but through all of our devices. And this is all through our electrical meters. They put in digital electrical meters, putting in digital electrical meters all over the place, so that they can selectively control your power and monitor your usage at a micro level, real time. I've got one on my house.
They're called.
Yeah, I have one. I have one. I can't get rid of it, so I have one. I don't want it. And there are plans in place published on the UN, and the government have governments in Europe and the United States, especially under the Obama administration, but also under Bush before him, that all just kind of presume we're going to depopulate most of the earth, move everybody into these small cities, and discourage reproduction, to literally, hopefully, reduce the total population of the planet in the coming decades.
Yeah, if where we're going now, like the future is looking very eerily similar to a cyberpunk novel. If you've read those types of dystopians, they look so similar with like a very big government.
Yeah, but it's what the years they're set in were too early. But yeah, we're approaching that soon.
Well, and the thing
Aaron here has been doing some research on that. Which is one of the reasons why we got it, because he's talking about, a lot of this stuff we're seeing in the big urban areas appears to be planned in the first place. Because they really do want a lower population.
It makes you wonder. It's called ICLEI. It's one of the major organizations or whatever is called ICLEI. It's Local Governments for Sustainability. And the thing is about the whole idea of states splitting off. One of the reasons why that idea doesn't necessarily seem to be feasible is that I just was researching about all of the members of ICLEI. It's ICLEI. You can go to the website icleiusa.org and look at their membership list. And it's a pretty long membership list. And, some of the cities are in Virginia and, let's see, New York, Iowa, Texas, North Carolina, Durham, North Carolina, Florida. So it's not just, it's not just confined to the West Coast. It's all of these different cities all around the U.S. And that's just in the United States. And then there's all these other affiliated, like the Organization of Islamic Capitals and Cities is another member of ICLEI. So it's a global thing, and that's what a lot of people who don't know much about Agenda 21, and it's commonly viewed as like, oh, it's all conspiratorial. People who talk about Agenda 21 are just conspiracy theorists, and the reason I think why that's the case is that the people who are pushing for it, will tend to demonize people who bring it into question, because it goes against their whole narrative and their whole agenda.
What
Well,
I'll say is right here, if you just go ahead and YouTube up Agenda 21, you will get some relatively good short descriptions of it. If well, there's one that's an hour and a half long by David Icke. I don't want to hear anybody scream and start with the ad hominems of "Ew, David Icke, he's nuts," or "Ew, these guys are conspiracy theorists." You know, look at the material for anybody listening and decide for yourself. I can verify some of this is abso-freaking-lutely true, and it's not even a secret. You can go look for the documentation right there in plain sight on the internet, and you'll look at the documentation in plain sight on the internet, and people will look at you and say, what are you, a conspiracy nut?" It's like people have been programmed to think that way. Because really, no, it's pretty scary. I mean, all these people who are talking about how we're overpopulated, because that's a meme among a whole lot of people in the intelligentsia, that we're overpopulated and we're going to have to do something about it.
Well, I got a solution for that. I got a solution for that. Build more cities.
That's exactly what it is. That's exactly what it is.
Have you ever traveled I know you all get around. You ever stop and think that all this empty space it takes to get from one city to another, all this space?
Yeah,
it's of overpopulation. Yeah,
it calls for the creation of megacities. It's part of the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals, and the first meeting for the planning stages of this was held in Rio de Janeiro, Brazil, in 1922. So it came from the United Nations. It came from it's a product of the Earth Summit, and so it calls for megacities, and then everything else, basically, all the public lands and all that are basically, people are cut off from that, and they're confined to these megacities.
Well, it makes you wonder if we're actually going to experience a form of nuclear war, because at least in some post-nuclear war scenario, the next thing would be to create megacities. Like, I'm not sure if you guys watched or read Judge Dredd. In his world, basically, the world experienced nuclear war, and most of America is a wasteland. But the populations are all put into these very massive megalopolises.
Yeah, and every restaurant was a Taco Bell, I remember.
No,
I'm not sure if that was a thing in Judge Dredd.
No, that's like 100 years from now.
That is a fun movie, but to get back to the Agenda 21
like
stuff,
Hunger Games,
it really is worth looking at. Yes, because actually some of that apocalyptic films look like they were made by Hollywood to set us up to accept that this might be an inevitable future or something, because there's a lot of that going on. They've been working this for decades and are very open. They're open to the public. You can just go look. When you hear members of the intelligentsia say we're overpopulated and we need to do something to get the human population down and under control, those are people who, with power and money and the means to do things, to affect that. And even the idea of after nuclear war, you would want people in cities. No, you would not. Unless you completely just you couldn't. No, you would actually want to be as far away from the cities as possible in a post-nuclear environment. That's where you would experience the least consequences of the fallout and would be most effectively able to shelter yourself. And exactly what Injun just said. If you ever look at how much empty space is in the United States alone, it's huge. It's enormously bigger than people seem to think it is. Because literally, I ran the numbers on this, and I'll do it now if somebody really wants to challenge me to it. You could fit the entire world population today, all of us, into one province of Canada and be less populated than the city of Chicago is. Literally, we have more space than people can possibly apparently imagine, because they think we're overcrowded, and we're not.
Wait, sorry, you said you could fit the entire world's population into Canada, into a province of Canada.
I could fit the entire current global population today into the province of Alberta, which is one of the medium-sized provinces.
Yeah, and you said that, and you made a comparison to Chicago.
Yeah, population density would be comparable to or equal to Chicago. You want to run these numbers? Because you can.
I guess I'm confused about population density. Sorry, guys.
Well, basically, you measure it by number of people per square kilometer.
Oh, okay. Now I get what you're saying. Okay.
Per square mile.
Okay, so in terms of density, like, how many people you're going to run into, it would be like living in Chicago.
Yes, if the entire, actually, it would be less, somewhat less. If I recall right, we can run the numbers, but I'm pretty sure, it would be less population dense. You would run into fewer people than you do in Chicago. If you put everybody on planet Earth today in Alberta, Canada.
Yeah, I think one of the reasons why there's so much space has to do with the fact is you're either you have a lot of people who don't want to develop there because they just want to be out in the middle of nowhere, because human beings have that tendency to want to be with other human beings, and then you also have environmental groups who will basically complain about development, who will tell you that stop developing on like wildlife.
A lot of those, not all, but a lot of those environmental groups are tied into Agenda 21. And then there's this is for all things to happen by, I think there's stuff planned to happen by 2030, and there's stuff planned to happen by 2050. It's an ongoing program that's been going on for a decade. So, they got timelines, they got schedules, they say what they're doing.
Yeah.
You can also search some of it happening in real time.
Yeah, you can also search Agenda 2030, and that's basically the same as Agenda 21. Agenda 21 they're not using that anymore. They're not using that as a
Agenda 2030. You're right. It's the 2030 agenda. Sorry.
Yeah.
And some will try to tell you this is a conspiracy theory. No, damn it! It is what it is a United Nations project. You could just
I've also considered the possibility that at least some people like David Icke, who have all these other kind of crazy ideas, or ideas that can be viewed as crazy by a lot of people.
Yeah, because he's into aliens and stuff big time, and I don't care, because his Agenda 21 thing.
Yeah. No, I don't care either.
You know what? I think I'm gonna agree with Aaron, and then I'm gonna let him talk again. Look for Agenda 2030, because that's a little more up to date on what's really going on.
Okay.
Yeah, and I do think that it's there's people. If David Icke ever listens to this video, no offense to him, but there are people who have brought up the possibility that people like him are also, purposely elevated to make all the people who
you mean controlled opposition,
speak out about Agenda 21 look crazy.
You mean controlled opposition. It's like how people were accusing Alex Jones of being controlled opposition, because I think one of the reasons why people started calling him that was because even though he has a lot of followers, even though he has people who watch him from the alt-right, they complain about him basically shilling for Israel or something like that, saying he's a Zionist.
He does have such connections confirmed as to having, at least according to some sources, having had friendly ties with Mossad and CIA within his lifetime. More to the point, if you, I would recommend alternative media guys like Black Pilled, Dustin Nemos, some of the QAnon people. You don't have to believe any one thing to realize, no, there's problems with Alex Jones too. He's got people who are rich who are behind him. You're allowed to only go so far, even in AM radio with the Court of Masters. Basically, it seems like Ted Turner and Rupert Murdoch are kind of somewhat rebels, but only a little bit rebels.
Yeah, it depends on. Yeah, like with Alex Jones, it's kind of like, people could come to the conclusion that he might be control opposition, but I could also like put forth the idea that the reason why he knows all these people is where he gets a lot of this info from that seems to come true as the years go on.
Let's just say he's not completely transparent about who's behind him. Others, and it's fair to point
people could get killed though.
Huh?
Oh, people who are leaking stuff to him could get killed though, so that might be why he's not transparent. So they'll end up getting killed.
If you look at other places like SGT report, it's very provocative. I don't think everything on it is always right, but it's very good. If you look for somebody called Black Pilled, there's a lot of other sources that will give you information that for some reason Alex Jones doesn't want to talk about. And that's fine, you know, because I think what we should all be doing is looking to alternative media voices, to who seems to be really honorable and telling the truth, and who seems to be bought and sold. Because I genuinely believe this. In the next few years, who do you trust and why do you trust them has got to be the most important question.
How many subscribers does Black Pilled have?
Black Pill, let me pull up his channel. He like all these guys gets regular YouTube harassment, but he's 129K. He probably should be a lot bigger.
Yeah.
If you watch him, he's actually quite brilliant, but he is not cheerful watching. I mean, there's a reason he's calling himself Black Pilled. But for so far as I can see, he's right more often than he's wrong. A lot of people won't like him because of that. You know, like he was down on the election results because he thinks we're all being fooled by Trump, because that like Trump's a false. He's going to turn out to be a bad guy in the end anyway. Not because he's a lefty, but because he thinks Trump is just one other wing of the controlled. I mean, he's very
Controlled opposition.
And he thinks everything's controlled opposition basically to Satan. And so, I mean, he's very negative, and I don't think he's always right. I think he's too extremely negative sometimes, but he's still very insightful many times.
Well, I do get Oh, I was just going to say, I mean, I have this theory that I think once you get to a certain amount of subscribers, that's when they're going to unperson you. Because I feel like Alex Jones got taken down because he had so many subscribers that it was basically they were going to take him down. So I feel like if once you pass like the 500,000 subscriber mark and start going up into like, the millions, then they're probably, YouTube might take you down, because then they're going to think that your footprint is too big.
It's already happened to him. It's happened to Dustin Nemos. We had him on here once. That was very cool of him. We were a little channel and he came on. He's much bigger than us, but I mean, he's on this. His channel is Dustin Nemos 5 in honor of, or 4, whichever it is, in honor of all the other channels they shut down on him. You know, and he keeps, you know, you're only allowed to get so big with certain points of view. He does these analyses of, like, he did an analysis of the film, called the film American Beauty. And he does a deconstruction of American Beauty and shows just how evil a movie that is, and how it was brainwashing. It was really truly a hatred of middle America and middle American values on every level.
And this was Black Pilled or someone else?
It was just depressing.
Well, because it made it that basically if you were the average straight middle-aged white male, your life had no meaning and everybody hated you, and everybody almost should hate you, and nothing meant anything.
Was this
the only functional people at all were a gay couple?
Oh, one of my favorite movies of all time came out that year. You seen Stir of Echoes?
Stir of Echoes? No, I'm not.
Yeah, he's about the this guy living in Chicago. He's like the most average guy you can think of, the most ordinary guy in the world. Then he gets hypnotized at this party, and then he starts coming into contact with the spirit realm, and he has visions of. Anyway, you should see it.
I think I may have seen that one before.
So what was the
title for me? Can you spell the title for me so I can at least look it up?
STIR of Echoes.
Stir of Echoes. Okay, a 1999 film, David Kopp, with Kevin Bacon. All right, everybody loves Kevin Bacon.
So what was the YouTube channel that did that review of American Beauty? Because I'm kind of curious about that now.
Black Pill, yes, go see Black Pill. Go. In fact, if you want to see some really insightful stuff, again, he's bleak, but he's often so spot on. He's at least like he's sobering.
What's the name of the video where he critiques the movie?
It's called The Fate of Americans. I'm showing you right here. It's called The Fate of Americans. And he's devastatingly accurate. I remember even watching that. I was a married man in the suburbs at the time, and I remember feeling intensely hated by that movie. like I was everything wrong with the world. I really kind of felt that way. I mean, I kind of related to the character of Lester, but even my wife at the time, this was before our divorce. It didn't, we wound up divorced, typical to the movie. But
It's called Black Pill or Black Pilled.
okay, the channel is called Black Pilled. Black Pilled is what he's called. I keep forgetting his actual name, but he's very insightful. And we'll never be allowed to get above a certain level.
Thank you to everyone who's already.
That's the one.
I believe so. Yes.
All right.
And if you also look, he's got one called "Selling Divorce to the West," which is a critique of a film that got an Oscar. It won Best Picture, but almost nobody remembers it anymore. And it talks about how this and other films were used for 1960s people to try to normalize divorce and make it seem like it was okay. And he has a breakdown of the film Norma Jean, which is still remembered as a Hollywood classic, and how it is basically a film to teach white middle-class Christian Americans to hate themselves or to see themselves in a bad light, and seem like being such a person is not a good thing to be. He's really insightful on it, and as somebody who lived through a lot of this and saw the times or saw the results of that, like when I was a kid, divorce was unusual still. There was still some social stigma to it, but there was this huge push to normalize it, and my parents were divorced, and which was unusual for guys of my age. But then, I watched over, because I'm 52, and I've watched since this, the 70s, as more and more, it did become more and more, as we pushed to normalize it and take all stigma away from it, it became more prevalent, and the devastation is obvious. Kids who grew up in divorced families are so much worse off.
Yeah.
They're so much worse off. They're so much more emotionally fragile. They're so much more narcissistic. They're so much more either egotistical or totally withdrawn. They're more likely to suicide. They're more likely to go to jail. They're more likely to be atheists.
And then also, like, yeah, nowadays they're like, you have these media hacks that are trying to sell you on like polygamy and like poly and stuff to make it seem like, oh, everyone should be in open relationships now, like monogamy is old fashioned. It's like, even though the studies show that it's actually better, more healthy for us to be monogamous than.
And while all of this is promoting social disunity and actually, yes, the depopulation. It's if you look into something called Project Mockingbird, now I should just stop here because I may be dropping too many red pills at once. But if you look into something called Project Mockingbird, you can see how there's been an effort, like a planned trajectory for where places like Hollywood want to go. They really do kind of seek the dissolution of middle American culture. That's what most of the people in the Hollywood elite want to do.
Yeah, what really sucks is,
yeah, so true.
What really sucks is
the feeling is mutual.
Well, see, what really sucks is that if people had realized what they were doing, we could have actually, combated them early on in like the middle 20th century when conservatives, or at least, the non-culturally Marxist people in Hollywood had some say, but then we let them take over. And now we have a stranglehold. Many believe,
and I do find this credible, that John F. Kennedy was the last president who tried to fight them. John F. Kennedy was the very last one to honestly try to fight them, and that they killed him for it.
Well, John F. Kennedy did some good things, but he also did some bad things. Like, he basically kind of helped set up the whole kind of, changing around America's migration policies, which is why now you get so many bigger immigration waves compared to before John F. Kennedy, which is like, very controlled and very specific on where people could come from to come to the United States.
Yeah, that's true.
And the Kennedys they're pretty deep in politics. Like, I mean, they're definitely not an innocent like political family. I feel like they're kind of like up there with like the Bushes and the Clintons when it comes to all sorts of political stuff that they've been involved in.
I would merely point out that nobody ever said JFK was a saint.
All right, I gotta go.
All right, God bless you, Injun. We'll probably be shutting this down soon.
Yeah.
But if you, I'll just add this one last bit since we've gone here. If you look into something called JFK Secret Society's speech and a few of the commentaries on it, he was directly attacking the concept of secret societies and people trying to control the world economic system to destroy national identities and bring on a one world government and that this was inappropriate and was taking on basically the very people that it is now alleged assassinated him. I actually don't even think it's credible anymore to think Oswald acted alone. I really don't. That's my opinion, though. And that's all I'm going to say.
Well, there's heavy evidence to show that there was a plot, basically. Yeah, like I think with these recent JFK file leaks, yeah, there's definitely, yeah.
It looks so bad for LBJ. It looks so bad.
Oh yeah, no, I'm almost certain that he basically is behind killing him, and like literally, it sounds like the relationship was falling apart between them and stuff. So yeah,
and the evidence is really strong now that he, along with evidence, secret societies and.
There's also a documentary I could recommend. It's not. It's a BBC documentary, so it's going to be somewhat biased, but it's called The Century of Self. Oops.
Sorry, you guys. Are you there? Because you guys kind of cut out.
I'm here. I don't know.
Okay, what were you saying?
I was just going to recommend there's a documentary from 2002. It's an Adam. Yeah, it's The Century of Self. I don't remember who it was who mentioned the 1920s, but it reminded me of that documentary because, that time was kind of one of the, monumental sort of decades for social engineering also.
Well, yeah, I mean the 1920s, well, right, like that's why they call it the Roaring Twenties. I mean, at least in America, because that was the time of Prohibition, where people tried the idea of legislating a form of morality, which was getting rid of alcohol and stuff. And yeah, it definitely shaped the country in many ways. Like like the sexual revolution basically started in that decade. The whole kind of laughing at authority and kind of treating like breaking the law as being very seductive and like cool. Because there were lots of people who thought that drinking alcohol and breaking the law was really cool, and then of course you have Al Capone and the crime syndicates of America, where basically organized crime got its start thanks to Prohibition.
Well, I mean, we'll always have organized crime, but yeah.
Well, yeah, but that's where a lot, like a huge number of it came from. Like it.
Yeah, I think a lot of it did for sure. Drinking did go down under Prohibition, but
it did, yeah.
But it was wrong what they were doing, and I feel the same way about the drug war currently. It actually shocks me that there are Christians who support the drug war. It's insanity.
Well, it's just the whole the idea that drugs are basically a sin. It's drugs do prey upon people. I mean,
I just simply believe that they should all be available over the counter with strict warning labels and strict social consequences for damage you do for using them. The black market is more evil. Make it available.
Marijuana, yes, but cocaine, heroin, like those drugs really screw people up, though. It's like,
well, and the worst and most evil drug of all is probably methamphetamine. Oh my God!
Oh yeah, no, yeah. I mean,
oh yeah, that fucks
people up. I live in a liberal city on the West Coast. Like we have so many heroin addicts and stuff. It's really sad and scary what it does to them. Yeah.
I'm here in California.
Heroin is horrible, but you can come back from heroin. What amphetamines do to people is, I mean, people can come back. It's not that there's no hope, but I mean, it's just like it eats you alive, man. But to see, I think the solution is exactly what I just said. Strong warning labels, and you can go into a pharmacy and get it, and a strong social stigma attached to it, and so severe social penalties for damage that you do if you use them. There, now go ahead, play with it, my child. And that's how I really believe it. And I think that is really how. I mean, it's a very Augustinian. I would argue it's in the tradition of Saint Augustine, who said whorehouses and things like that should be allowed. They should just be put in places where people like can go and do that, where everybody else who wants to like raise their kids in a normal, safe environment doesn't have to be near that. So like St. Augustine would advocate, for example, a place like Las Vegas is arguably a good thing if we only have one Las Vegas in the United States.
Yeah. Well, I find it interesting enough is that, so basically heroin is probably one of the main reasons why like places like San Francisco have so many problems with human feces on the road. Yeah. Because apparently heroin basically makes it so you're constipated and stuff. So essentially no one goes to use the restroom, and then eventually they have to go, which is why they're doing it in the streets.
They explode,
I've been to San Francisco and I've seen that.
Oh yeah, so yes, that's.
Oh fuck.
This was unthinkable 40 years ago.
Oh yeah, but then of course the progressive agenda came in.
Yes, and the progressive agenda. By the way, have you ever wondered what progressing towards what is when it's not incoherent? It is basically Agenda 2030. Go look into it.
Mm-hmm.
Well, yeah, I mean,
that is what they're progressing towards. They're describing it to you when you look into Agenda 2030.
Yeah, it's basically what's happening is that where we have a huge number of people right now in the country who basically are fine with sacrificing their freedoms for security. Like you have the news media acting like mass shootings are everywhere and stuff, despite the fact that like mass shootings make up a very small fraction of homicides, even gun homicides in the nation and stuff. Yeah.
If you actually put per capita in, we're actually just as safe as Germany when it comes to mass shootings. Germany has a smaller population, hence that's why they don't have as many spree killings. Well, although they also have Islamic terror attacks.
Well, here's the funny thing about mass shootings, like especially school shootings. Like if a security guard accidentally discharges his firearm and no one gets hurt, that counts as a school shooting, basically.
I've heard that, yeah, because I've seen so-called stats thrown around in the progressive media where they say there's like 350 shootings a year in schools, and that counts, like you said, security guards accidentally discharging the weapon and that kind of shit, and kids.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, like if there's like if it's after school hours and like say like you're in inner city school and it's after school hours and a bunch of drug dealers are coming to do a drug deal on the playground and one decides to shoot another and stuff, that would count as a school shooting as well.
Also, I'll tell you another false stat they use is they will sometimes pull out the number of children who are victims of shootings, and what they don't tell you is children is anybody under the age of 18. So if it's a 17-year-old, or if a 13-year-old shoots a 17-year-old in a gang-related shooting or a drug dealer-related shooting, which is a very real thing in places like Detroit and Chicago. They call that a child shooting. Well, it was gang stuff. That was like some kind of tragic accident. And it is true. I'm sorry. People should not disarm. They really should not. They should not consider.
Oh yeah, no. It's and then you have free speech act. Then you have people who are basically talking about like limiting free speech because they're worried about people's safety and stuff. And then in light of all this synagogue shooting, now people are demanding like a crackdown upon supposed radicalization of online speech.
So far right movements. Yeah, I've heard of that. They're cracking down on what they call radical right movements. And
I don't call them right wing. I think those guys are left wingers because they like big government as well. So it's like if you support big government, you're not right wing and stuff.
Well, yeah. Let me finish what I'm saying though. Yeah, and who they're considering radical right are just normal conservatives now.
Can I give you can I just give you an insight, gentlemen? I mean, this really is where I consider my politics as red pill. Left and right, and even this whole statist versus collectivist, capitalist versus, it's all a dialectic that has been fed to you artificially. You've been fed a false binary. Aristotle said for every truth there are two equal and opposite untruths. What's really been going on really looks like the Agenda 2030 stuff. And we are, like in a two-party system, we are being fed a fake version of conservatism to go against a fake version of liberalism, when in fact both had become tools of Agenda 2030, of this plan that's been going on for the last 50, 60, 70, or a little longer years. It's an open thing. You can even find some of this in these cities that we're talking about.
What do these agendas say for the people who basically believe in freedom and small government? Are we still controlled opposition, or are we actually the enemy of their agenda?
No, some of you are real, and some of you are controlled opposition and fake, and you're being given a false, version of conservatism that's not really on your side. Not because the Jews per se. There are Zionist influences on this. There are KGB interests and all. I mean, there's interests of all the world's intelligence agencies, because all the stuff that's going on that never gets into the mainstream press. A thing to understand that I think everybody needs to know is that more than 95% of our media, more than 90% of our media is controlled by 6 major media corporations. That means all the movies, all the television, all the news. They own more than 90% of all the local radio stations and television stations. They've used regulatory capture to make it almost impossible to start your own local AM and FM radio stations. You should be able to do that cheaply, but they lock it down and make it very expensive. So even though they'll say AM radio or whatever is still out there as sort of a bastion of freedom, because they got some corporate voices on there, but they are people like Rush Limbaugh and others that are actually sort of acceptable level, that don't get really into this good stuff because they still answer to some corporate powers. And so people, it's why I'm going back to, it's a question of who you trust and why do you trust them. It's also why you can ultimately only trust God. But the progressive agenda includes a false narrative, a false binary of left and right.
It's like,
what's really going on is that we have the globalist forces which are pushing for this agenda. And we have what's the growing nationalist populist revolt, which is happening in countries all over the country, all over the planet. And so,
how I view this all is that I feel like this is like an even more, because of how centralized and how expansive our media has become. This is like an even worse Red Scare that happened back in the 50s. Although I will say the Red Scare was partly justified given how many communists there actually were in society. But right now we're in a Nazi scare where we have so many people who are basically terrified that there are white supremacists everywhere.
Yeah,
at the moment,
you look at the media, they throw around this white nationalist, fascist, racist, white supremacist, Adolf Hitler sympathizer, all as if Adolf Hitler and the Third Reich exists right now. They don't. The Nazi Germany has been long defeated since 1945. They don't seem to realize.
Yeah, and those that sort of claim they legitimately believe that they are the successors, legitimate neo-Nazis, they tend to keep it on the down low, and they're not really,
here's something
seriously.
Here's something that I found. I found that they talk about all these white supremacist groups, but if you look at the top three white supremacy groups, the KKK, Aryan Nations, and neo-Nazis, the vast majority of those members of each group that I just mentioned are rotting in jail.
And let me tell you something. All the anti-Christian hate has been part of a planned media campaign, starting since the new atheist explosion in like around 2006 or whenever that was. And the whole internet atheist brigade that came onto the internet was all part of pushing, demonizing the Christian religion.
Don't you find it funny that how the news media now has not only been attacking, like, say, people who are anti-big government, they're also even attacking local police as well, calling the police an awful institution stuff. But isn't it funny how, like, the media is now suddenly silent about the FBI and CIA and all of the horrible things that they've done? It's like literally, it's like these people have been attacking all forms of non-state, non-federal government-based organizations because the police are still a local institution at the moment.
During the Cold War, the left hated the FBI and CIA with rightfully so because they did.
That's because it was a balance. The deep state as it wasn't as there probably was a deep state, but I feel like the balance between like left and right as well as status, and it just was different now. I feel like the left has basically been co-opted and taken over.
Well, I think it's because when Obama won the presidency back in 2008, he was able to massively shift the Overton window.
Oh, yeah. That guy, I think he was a socialist and stuff. He just didn't say it. Yeah.
He shifted the main national security concern. Geez, I can't speak. He shifted the main national security concern from radical jihadism to white supremacy, which made no fucking sense whatsoever because Islamic jihadism are part of a bigger international clique.
It's like Obama was like a very anti-Christian president because like people he like refused to give like special refugee status to Christians in the Middle East despite the fact that there was genocide going on against them by these very radical groups.
Yeah. Yep, that's true. When Angela Merkel, she invited all these Muslim economic migrants, but she didn't allow in a single Yazidi or a single Christian. Hardly any got into Germany. Did were attacked by the Muslim migrants.
On Thursday coming up, just so you know, we're going to be interviewing one of our newer volunteers. He also hangs out with Mike from Inspiring Philosophy, but he's one of the Syriac Orthodox Christians who experienced the brutal repressions. He was his family was one of the lucky ones who made it to Germany. Obama allowed millions of Christians to undergo a hideous slaughter. Nobody knows, nobody cares. It's one of the reasons why we're so passionate about this issue here. Because honest to God, religious repression is a thing, and religious persecution is a thing by radical secularists. And it's Go ahead.
I was gonna say, but see, here's the crazy thing. You gotta realize that I think a huge portion of the American population don't even think probably that there are Christians in the Middle East. They think literally everyone there is a Muslim. It's like
that did this bullshit thing where they assume that anyone who is Middle Eastern must be a Muslim because
which is why they're now calling Islamophobia racism and stuff now because they think it's like
I heard that the other day.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was just Googling that this morning, and if you type in Islam's not a race into the Google search engine, the first thing you get is like, oh, Islam is not a race is code word for I don't like brown people and that kind of bullshit from like BuzzFeed. It's like fucking fuck you, buddies.
Really quick, just while we're sort of still kind of on the topic of the whole illusion between right versus left and progressives versus communism versus nationalism and all that. I've been listening to an audiobook version of this book here that I'm sharing on the screen called Lords of Finance by Liaquat Ahmed. And I couldn't recommend it more. I'm into like chapter 8 or something now. And it goes into basically who's behind the global banking system, including the Reichsbank in that ended up being like the main bank for Nazi Germany. A guy named I can't remember his first name. His last name is Schacht, who was the head of the Reichsbank for a long time, and his role in all of it, and It kind of just goes into how they all kind of like engineered the financial crisis.
And by the way, can I say that these same forces are often tied into these same progressive causes
and the nationalist causes.
Yes, and to the nationalist causes. So you can't trust everybody. But yeah,
I mean,
the worldwide economic system is by the international bankers is geared around this whole global agenda. And the politics are increasingly basically various forms of nationalist groups that are pushing back. And that includes Donald Trump, who has declared himself a nationalist. And the Republican Party is turning into a nationalist party. Now, that might terrify some people, but for others, it's going to be like, well, if it's a choice between one or the other, they're going to, growing populations are going toward the nationalist side.
Well, I blame
it's not necessarily a good thing, not necessarily the ideal situation, but it is what's happening. So it's good to be aware of it.
I blame. The thing is, I blame. Oh, well, again, there's kind of multiple blames, but the biggest blame, in my opinion, is the Obama years. I mean, Bush had some influence on it, but I feel like the Obama years basically, in a sense, forced the Republicans to transform this. You know, Obama did this. He literally divided the country into all these different groups and made like demographics and ethnicity seem like it actually mattered, which kind of basically made the Republicans say, hey, we're going to have to appeal to more nationalistic and stuff. You know what I mean? Like, I just think the Obama years really did the most damage to like changing the face of American politics.
Well, not to mention,
the thing is, you know what's sad about saying that is that there are people who really love him who don't agree with you at all, and don't see reality of what you're seeing at all. They see it in very completely different terms, and I mean, I've even had friends, you know, that I talk to about it, and it's tragic to me. But to me, you know, feminism, which is, you know, misandry, is a planned thing, you know. And is part of this whole thing too, because feminism makes women miserable, and while it makes some women, you know, does some good things for some women, usually they're elite, powerful women. The women in the lower classes suffer severely under the yoke of feminism, actually, which is why most women can't stand feminism.
That's why, I mean, like, I mean, literally, we had a president. I mean, it's like literally, we had a president who literally decided to have like the FBI investigate the fucking Tea Party and stuff. Like, seriously, Obama was like apparently that paranoid about a bunch of small government people, like libertarians, who thought that they were a potential terrorist group. That's like freaking insane.
I said, that's because during his years, he massively shifted national security concerns from radical jihadism to quote unquote white supremacy groups. Which, if you actually looked at most white supremacy groups, they were mostly just like two neo-Nazis cooking meth in their basement.
Yeah, you have to be like, yeah, it's like it's seriously, that's fascist right there. So it's like, seriously, you look like a fucking fascist if you're going to basically that paranoid because a group doesn't like the fact that you basically have espoused politics that sound very eerie similar to socialism and stuff, you know, especially if you read his book and stuff. Yeah.
Not to mention the disaster he created in the Middle East with his so-called Arab Spring policy and
Arab
the
Spring,
disaster that
Libya.
and taking out Gaddafi in Libya, that opened up the gates, you know, to the European migration crisis we see going on to this day in Europe.
See, and I still think that you know, at the end of the day, the banks are behind every major world war, behind, you know, any major war, let alone any major world war. They were,
well, they definitely profit from
both sides of the civil wars. They were funding, you know, all the different wars.
I heard that they actually funded both.
Arab Spring too.
Yeah, they're like arms dealers. Just they don't deal in arms; they deal in money.
Yeah, I've heard that the banksters actually funded not only just the German Nazis in Germany, but they also funded the Bolsheviks too in Russia.
Oh yeah, no, the theory, one conspiracy theory that I watched was that basically if the regime topples, it's normally because the leader decided that they were going to try and find a non-banking system way of getting around these global bankers. So that's when they fall and stuff.
That's what happened to poor Gaddafi.
Yeah, apparently it's what Hitler tried to do, and also Stalin tried to do as well, which is why they ended up getting killed.
Yeah, and that's also what they tried to do with Assad too, which is why Bashar al-Assad experienced how we should say freedom and democracy by America via the funding of freedom fighters.
Yeah,
You know what, guys? This has been fun, but we've been going 2 hours, so we probably should put it down. We've probably also gotten more political than we needed to be.
Yeah, sorry, this is supposed to be a chill stream.
Well, I love politics. We get all heated up and shit.
And I gotta say, even when people keep bashing on liberals and progressives, you gotta remember there are people on the so-called left or whatever who are honorable and really believe the things they believe. And you know, we don't have them all here, but they you know, we have friends that are. I mean, there are people who are honorable on the left who will say things like,
Yeah.
who will be saying, yeah, let me just point out a couple, because this is thing we should be thankful for such people. You know, there are people on the left who are like, no, we really do need to, you know, it was people on the left who were screaming that media was being concentrated in too small hands. It was people on the right who laughed at them and said they were wrong and the market would fix it. You know, people on the right should own that. There were honorable people on the left pointing that problem out. People like Bobby Kennedy Jr. Appear to be doing stuff that really pisses off the progressive establishment, and he calls out on issues all the time where there are injustices that the global establishment doesn't want to talk about. So there's a bunch of them out there, and they're good to know, because the sincere people who just want a better world are not the same thing as this sort of parasitic class who hates us, basically.
I mean,
the feminists and the SJW and all them people. They hate us.
I understand that. It's just my one problem with them is that they tend to be very naive, or they just kind of tend to downplay the damage that what some of the things that they believe in are actually doing.
Right.
Let's just all pray and remember that it's good to remember that there are honorable people who don't always agree with us on everything. And let's close this out, guys.
Yeah,
okay.
That's true.
So,
yeah. Period. It's like in my case, once you've taken the red pill, there is no going back.
Well,
yeah. And I will say one thing is that I was for a long time a liberal. I voted for Obama back when I just graduated from high school. I thought it was a deal. And then 8 years later, I'm disillusioned by his administration just due to all his bad policies and making race relations worse. And, you know, so forth, so on.
But there's, I know. And there's also people who haven't. See, I was trying to end on a pleasant note to all of our fellow Americans. Okay, so can we try and at least do that our best we can?
Could I also just make sort of a humorous statement too? That's in the spirit of Thanksgiving. It's important to remember that they want to make us all into turkeys.
There you go. There you go. All right, everybody. Well, go ahead. One more. All right, everybody. Give us a like. Give us a subscribe. I believe Dimitri. I believe John Baptiste and probably Dimitri are going to be doing something tomorrow. We're here every night. So God bless everybody.